Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're all well. Great to see you here today. As Helen said, week 3 of the art of belonging. Everyone wants to belong somewhere. We all do, don't we? We want to, we're a place where we can be known, a place where, we feel that we're a part of something. That's why, some people will go to the same pub either every night or every week, and they'll sit in the same seat. Why? Because they just want to be part of something that they know well, and they will get to know others who come along. It's why people put on football shirts of their favorite team, and they'll look to gather and to watch matches. Why? Because they want to feel part of something. They want to feel part of something bigger than just themselves. And here at the Forge, our heart is for people to belong here. For this to be a safe community where we can be known and we can get to know others, where we can build friendships, where we can be open and, play a part in shaping the kind of the community that we're part of. So week 1, I highlighted something which I think is really, really important for all of us to know. And that's this, that we can belong here at the Forge before we believe. This might be a bit different to how some other churches operate and function, but we feel that this is really important, that people can feel that they belong to this community, even if they haven't quite sorted out everything that they believe about Jesus and about God. And the reason we do this, and the reason why we think this is so important, is because it allows us then to journey with people as they look to explore about faith and about Jesus. Week 2, last week, we just looked at friendship and the importance of friendship, of being able to build a network of people who can support us, who will stand alongside us, and that we can stand alongside others too. And all of this is because, honestly, belonging to the family of God and being known as a friend of God, there is nothing better. There is nothing better. And what I've discovered is that as I belong to the family of God, that's us, and as I know that I'm a friend of God, what Jesus does, Jesus enables me or enables life to be better for me, but also it enables me to be better at life because he shows us a different way to live. And so today's the art of belonging. We are looking at this word called involvement. If you were to go back about 2,400 years, you will find a man standing in a city that has been decimated. It's a bit of a war-torn city. And he's looking around and he's seeing the devastation and he sees how open and how vulnerable this city is. Because what had happened is that 70 years prior to this man called Nehemiah standing and looking at the city of Jerusalem, the Babylonians had come in. They were the superpower of the day. And they had swept in and they had taken off many of the people of Israel and carted them off to Babylon. And in doing so, they had broken down the protective walls that surrounded Jerusalem. And people had been carted off. And so for 70 years, they were held in captivity. So if you're old enough to remember a song, By the Rivers of Babylon, remember Boney M? Some of you are going, yes. Some of you are going, no, never heard of it. Anyway, that song which they sung was the lament of people who were in Babylon. Because they were singing by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, how we wept as we remembered Zion. Or in other words, they remembered Jerusalem. They remembered where they came from. And Nehemiah, 70 years later, he would have been born in captivity. And he was working for the king, and he had a very important role. He was the wine taster for the king. Now, if there's any job to get, that has to be that one, doesn't it? So he was the wine taster to make sure that the wine wasn't poisoned, it wasn't off, and so that the king could then drink however he wanted. And one day, the king came in and saw Nehemiah. And as Nehemiah was offering him his drink, he saw how miserable he looked. Because Nehemiah had heard about the city of Jerusalem and how war-torn and struck down that city was. And the king said, well, what do you want? And he said, I'd love to be able to go back there because I'd love to see the city restored. And amazingly, God had turned the heart of this new king. And so the king said, you go then. And so Nehemiah made this journey from Babylon all the way to Israel. And he made his way to Jerusalem. And he writes down an account of what happens. And you find it in a book called Nehemiah. And this is what he writes. So I arrived in Jerusalem, and 3 days later, I slipped out during the night, taking only a few others with me. I'd not told anyone about the plans God had put in my heart for Jerusalem. So he explores the whole city. He gets to see how damaged it is, where work needs to be done. And then he speaks to the Jewish leaders, the leaders who had already come back at this point. And he says this, you know very well what trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire. Let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and end this disgrace. And so every city, the only way in which you could protect a city in those days was literally to build a wall that would surround the city. And it would have a number of gates where they could kind of supervise who went in and who went out. And then I told them about how gracious the hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. And they replied at once, yes, let's rebuild the wall. So they began the good work. And through an extraordinary turn of events, he shared the vision of rebuilding the wall with the people who were now living there. And within 52 days, the wall had been completely rebuilt. It was extraordinary. People would have thought it would have taken years and years, but it took 52 days. How did that happen? Well, Nehemiah, first of all, he set out the vision of what he wanted to see happen. He wanted to see Jerusalem restored. He then got the people on board with him to buy into the vision and to get them involved. And I loved what he did, because what he did was this, that he said, wherever you live, you build the wall next to your house. In other words, if you don't bother, people are going to come in through the gap that you haven't built, and whose house will they come across first? So he says, take ownership of this. Take ownership of it. And the people said, yes, that's what we're going to do. And so within those 52 days, they could build the wall. Do you know what? So much can be achieved when people own a shared vision, when they get involved, and they look to work together. And it's that involvement and working together that I think brings such a sense of belonging. A man called Paul, many years later, who was writing letters to some people. He wrote this, it was to some people in Ephesus, and he wrote these words, because he used the analogy not just of building walls, but he used the analogy of a body, and he said this. He says, under that's God's direction, the whole body fits together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. So he likens the church, he likens a community like us to a body that we fit together perfectly. And that each one of us has a specific role to play for the body to function properly. So he says this, and you can see it's highlighted there, as each part does its own special work. In other words, you and I have a special gift that God has given to us to be used within the body of the church. We're all part of that, and it depends on these things. It depends on, well, the gifts that God has given. There are so many different gifts. There's gifts of administration. There's gifts of mercy. There's gifts of wisdom. There's gifts of teaching. There's gifts of creative communication. You know, some of the people up here on stage just a little while ago have the gift of creative communication. The way in which they then work together is blooming fantastic. Passion and interests that he's put in our hearts. You know, God doesn't call us to do stuff that we don't like. He calls us to do things which fit with our interests and with things that stir us. So for some of us here, in fact, for a number of people who are not in this room at the moment, they are serving our kids. Why? Because they have a passion for kids and to see the kids' work grow and flourish and to see the kids discovering Jesus for themselves. Now, not everyone has that gift. Some of you hate kids, I know. But no, but we all have these kind of different responses to different things. It depends on the passion and interest that is put in our heart. Then there's our personality and how we like to operate. You know, some people just love to be on stage. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, some people are kind of really extrovert and love to be able to go up. They can walk into a room. In fact, yesterday I went to a concert in a place called Pakenham, and I went with my brother. He was the only person I knew there. I talked to so many. I worked the room, I tell you. It was great. I loved it. For others of you, you would think I would not speak to anyone. I would just sit there and wait for the concert to happen and then leave and not say anything. We have different personalities, and God uses those different personalities to enable us to be able to serve within the life of the church. Fourthly, there we go, we're going down the list there. Fourthly, the needs of the community. If you're part of a family, some of you have a very special gift of washing up. And most of you don't, but you still have to do it. Yes? And so within a community like this, there are very specific roles that each of us can then play a part in. But there are some which just need to happen. And so did you know that one of my spiritual gifts is not setting out chairs? It's not. But I do it each week, or I try to do it each week. Why? Well, because it needs to get done. And so all of these things play a part in where we can have a special effect within the life of a church community. So sometimes it will involve the uniqueness of who we are. Sometimes it's just getting involved, getting messy, and getting involved where help is needed. So with that in mind, we start 2 services from Easter Sunday onwards. 2 services, one at 9, one at 11. Our kids' work and our youth work will be operating at the 11 o'clock service. So we're having to double up on a whole load of roles. So if you are a bit more of an extrovert, then we have a team called the Welcome Team. They wear green T-shirts. They are wonderful people. And so when you arrive, you'll be greeted in the car park. You'll be greeted at the door. I tell you, they are so good. They are so. Why? Because they want you to feel welcomed. Well, in doubling up services, we're going to need to double up teams of welcomers. And so for some of you, you are people. Yes, that's right. You know, you just love to be able to talk with others. Well, that could be a first step into serving for you. For those of you who are perhaps a bit more, I don't want to do that. I can't talk to people. How weird you are then if that... No, not really. For some of you, you are more introverted. Well, we are also looking to serve refreshments after the first service and after the second service. It's much more of a kind of a backroom role. You do still have to talk with people. I'm sorry, there's no getting away from it. But it's another role which we're needing to be able to kind of multiply teams for. And if you're practical in that way, then how about joining that team? We have our kids' work. Kids' work is vital within the life of the church. Did you know that more people become followers of Jesus between the ages of 0 to 18 than of any other age? More people become followers of Jesus under the age of 18. And so, the investment that we can make within our kids' work is so vitally important. And we have our kids called the Uptown Kids, which is our primary school age. We would love to see if there are people here who have a passion for kids and want to invest in them, maybe on a once a fortnight or once a month basis, you could be involved in our Uptown Kids ministry. Some of you here have some very special skills, the skills and the patience that many of us don't have. And that's looking after children who either have a physical disability or they're called SEND children, SEND children, people with special needs and special kind of physical disabilities too. And they play an important part within the life of our church. And so for some of you, that might be the perfect setting where you work with one or two of those children. So there's all kinds of things. If we link with the Debenham High School, and Debenham High School have said that one of the things which they wanted was an after-school club for kids who would be going home to an empty house and having to get their own tea. And so we're providing a thing called Base Bites that runs from, I think it's 3:30 till 6:30. Now, for some of you who work full-time, that's just out of the question. You can't do that. But for some of you who are part-time or are perhaps not working at the moment, that could be a step into serving alongside Tim and Becky Warnock and others who are part of that team. You'll see the first image up there is of our furniture bank. Last December, John Collison stepped away from leading that. He is still involved, but we're still looking for more volunteers to help to pick up furniture, deliver furniture, and to bring some administration to that. That could be where you could first start serving. I believe, and I really do believe this, that the best way to have a sense of belonging to a community is not when we sit back and let everyone serve us. I don't think that helps us to feel that we belong. I think it's when we are able to contribute and play a part within the life of the church. And that can happen even before you believe. Take a watch of Rudy's story.
So my name's Rudy. I've been coming to Forge Church since Christmas 2022. So we'd been living in Stowmarket for maybe about 6 months, and then we decided to rekindle an old relationship with the Laskys, who were obviously deeply involved at Forge. So we came along to the Christmas big service, and that just started the great big snowball, and we've been addicted ever since, really. So my wife has been a lifelong full of faith person. I've been sort of drifting in and out for quite a lot of my life. But when we came to the Forge, I tentatively told my wife that I was definitely feeling new things and I was open to exploring new things. From those early days, things have changed dramatically. I was baptised roughly this time last year, and my life's in a completely different place, and it's all because of the faith that I've built. Ben Lasky, who's the creative director at the Forge, he knew that I'd done some PA work and sound work. I'd been wanting to get involved in some way, and Lasky was just able to read my mind and make the first step for me. So after about 6 months of attending Forge, started getting involved and started getting trained by Steve Adlam. I'm a hobby musician myself, but I'm not good at stages. So the stage wasn't for me, definitely not for now anyway. And there's other, obviously, all sorts of bits in the church that can be served in. The welcome team isn't something that I could necessarily do. We've got some amazing people that just have the personality that just bubbles, and it's amazing to do, but I don't think I'd be able to pull that off, not convincingly every week anyway. So my place is at the back of the church, where I can hide behind my desk with my blinking lights, and I can just really dive into what I'm doing. The best part of being involved is the connection that I feel to God and the congregation and the community when the band is going for it and the congregation's going for it. And I'm completely engrossed in what I'm doing on the desk technically, but also completely engrossed in worship. And it's almost out of body sort of stuff, where it allows me to be free in a way that I don't know how else to be free in that way, because I'm so engrossed and so involved. The way that Forge acts and carries things out is just exactly what I needed at that particular time and what I continue to need. And everyone says it, so it makes you sort of wonder, how can everyone have this feeling of that message today was for me? But it's so frequent that I come home from church and it's just like, that was exactly the thing that I was working on this week, and I was just looking for that little nudge in the right direction, and every Sunday it's just there, and that's why it's just so hard not to be there. The time period in which where I'd started coming to church and I still wasn't fully off the fence, and I was working on my faith and I was trying to understand these new sort of feelings I was working on, it was all in the same time period as when I was joining the tech team and meeting all these people, these beautiful, amazing people, and it's so refreshing to be surrounded by such brilliant, enthusiastic and supportive people. So I'm getting my community from there, and then I'm growing in my faith week on week at the church, and I'm exploring really difficult questions in Alpha, all in that same period. So I had a lot going on for those couple of months, but I wouldn't have had it any other way, because that accumulation of all those events coming together, the fact that I was serving in a church where I really wasn't sure how I felt about things, but it felt like I had to be there, and even though I wasn't necessarily directly in line with what they were saying, and the fact that I could belong and serve in that team whilst being a person that maybe for those, definitely the first few weeks when I was serving on the team, I was saying, look, I'm not really a Christian, I like it here. If you're feeling like the Forge is somewhere that is good for you, and maybe you're not sure if you're ready for a group or if you're ready for Alpha, if it all seems too much, I would just say that the communities within the teams and the volunteering and all that sort of stuff is such a great place to be, and you get to see all the amazing work that's done firsthand, and you get to see all the work that goes into it to create this amazing ethos that everyone gets to experience. It really puts the perspective on what's happening around you.
Isn't that brilliant? Oh, Rudy, what Rudy said there was just outstanding, and with such a beard. I mean, it's just amazing, just amazing. But he served and belonged as he journeyed towards believing. He knew his gifts, and he's able to use his gifts as worship to God. And his personality is more introverted than extroverted, so he quietly serves from the back. I'll tell you, I am so excited in seeing God at work in your life, Rudy. It is so, so good. So you can be involved, you can belong before you believe. And if you do believe, then you really do need to be involved. Because Jesus said something so important. He says, I haven't come to be served. He could easily have said, well, I'm the king. Come on, just do whatever I ask. No. He didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So our model is Jesus. And if we're a Jesus follower, then we need to follow his example in serving others. Hold that thought. As well as working for the Forge, I work 4 days for the Forge, and I work half a day with an organization, a network of churches, which is called the Further Faster Network. And it was started in 2019. The Forge was one of the kind of founding churches, the 5 founding churches. And there are about 40 different churches like the Forge around the country who want to be able to reach people who aren't used to coming to church. And so I'm one of the leaders of one of the churches who are part of that. I'm a director of the charity, and I'm also part of the staff team. And that means that I have to, at various times, travel down to London or travel to Ireland or sometimes even travel to Austria to hold meetings. And yeah, it's good. I like it. I like it. Sarah doesn't. Sarah complains a lot, don't you, about my time. I have to be honest, complains about my time traveling off and having, these different meetings. It's not that she misses me, it's because I do the cooking. And I bring her breakfast in bed and make tea and things like that. That's really the only reason, I'm sure. But a couple of years ago, I had to travel to Dublin, and we were going to have 2 days of meetings there in Dublin. And so I was put up in a hotel, and I arrived. And when I walked into the room of my hotel, oh, my life, it was fantastic. There was a balcony which overlooked all the countryside around. It had this great big bedroom, which had this huge king-size bed, which on top of it had got a whole kind of a hamper of snacks, all with a little card saying "Welcome, Steve" on it. It had a bathroom, but it had 2 bathrooms to it, which I couldn't quite work out which side to use. But anyway, it was just amazing. So I thought, well, just to cheer Sarah up, I'll show her how good it is. And so I sent this little video to her to say, I'm having to rough it here in Dublin at the moment, so think of me. Look forward to seeing you soon. I was going to show the response, but it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't appropriate. Do you know what? In growing up, I'd never stayed in hotels. We had stayed in B&Bs or self-catering places because my parents didn't have much money. And so it was always the case of going down to the south of England and going to a B&B or whatever. And so for me, growing up as an adult now and being able to experience a hotel, wow, I mean, it's been quite exciting for me. And so initially, I would always look forward to, I'm going to stay in a hotel. Kind of felt posh and all adult-like, you know. But as time has gone on, I haven't enjoyed my hotel experience in quite the same way. And actually, what I really long for is to be able to get back home. You see, there's a huge difference between a hotel and a home. And I know which one I prefer. In fact, I know which one you prefer. Now, I say this because a man called James Murray, who is a pastor of a church in Sydney, I follow him on Instagram, and he puts some amazing posts out, all linked with church. And one of his posts about whether we treat church as a hotel or as a home. Honestly, the wording that he put in this Instagram post was really quite bold. So this is what he wrote. He said, so what's the difference between a hotel mentality and a home mentality? Treating a church like a hotel leads to a consumer mindset. You come expecting to be served, seeking comfort, and leaving if the experience doesn't meet your preferences. Treating the church like a hotel leads to temporary commitment. Just like a hotel stay, your involvement is short-term and transactional. You only show up when it's convenient. It's minimal investment that you don't take ownership of the church's mission or well-being because it's not yours to maintain. He spoke about the expectations of perfection, that you expect everything to meet your standards, and if it doesn't, you look for another hotel or church that does. And a lack of deep relationships. You interact with people casually, but avoid responsibility of deeper community. Then he goes on to say this: treating the church like a home is different because it leads to ownership mentality. You take responsibility for the church's health, investing in its people and mission. There's a commitment to growth, that you stay even when things aren't perfect, working through difficulties rather than just leaving. Grace for imperfections. Just like a family home, you extend grace when issues arise rather than walking away. And deep relationships. You build strong, lasting relationships, walking alongside others through ups and downs of life. And then he concludes his Instagram post with these words. I think this is so powerful. The truth is, Jesus and the early church leaders never built spiritual hotels for people to visit occasionally. Instead, they committed to building spiritual homes, places where people would come, commit, love, and grow as a family of believers. Now, that's the kind of belonging, that's the kind of community here at the Forge that I long for people to belong to a family, to build friendships, to own the mission and vision, and participate and play your part in seeing that come to fruition. Our church is built around one why. Why do we exist? It's to help people to find and to follow Jesus. And how do we go about that? Well, it's by creating and being a church community that unchurched people love to be part of. So you can belong before you believe. And to create that family, create that feeling of belonging and of being at home, it requires involvement. It requires serving others and of being part of something bigger than just ourselves. So, coming up, questions for you to consider as you go into this week. What gifts and talents do you have? What experiences have you had that you can bring into the life of the church? What area of church community are you most drawn to? Is it with the tiny little ones? Is it with the teenagers? Is it with those out in the community and serving them? Or is it part of welcoming and building a community here on a Sunday? Where will you serve and play your unique part? Well, that will come through what you're passionate about and the gift that God has given to you. And how can you help meet the needs of the church community? Just if there's a need, are you happy to step up and to be involved to help out? What I want to do is encourage you this week to pray. To pray, God, where can I play a part within the life of the Forge? What could my role be? I don't want it to be a hotel experience. I want it to be a home experience. On our website, you'll find, we showed the picture earlier just of the website. We've got the 5 main big serving areas, but also below that, you will find loads of others. Just hit the contact us and we will get in touch with you and we will help you to find your place within the life of the church. Why? Because you are uniquely gifted to serve a greater purpose. God doesn't put a gift in you just to make you feel good. He does it in order to serve others. So what did Paul say? Paul said this, under his, that's God's direction. That's why we need to pray. We need to say, God, where do you want me to be involved? Under his direction, the whole body fits together perfectly. And as each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow. So you play a part in helping others to grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. Let's stand, shall we? I let James Murray say the hard bit there. If you noticed when I just quoted him from Instagram. But let's not make the Forge a hotel. Don't make it your hotel. Make it your home. A home where you belong. A home where you can play a part. Father God, I thank you that you call us to community. You call us to belong. Lord, your heart is for us to belong to you, to be friends with you, and to be able to serve as Jesus served. So God, whether we've found faith or not, I pray that for those people who perhaps haven't, that they might still know that they can play a part within this community, which will be part of their journey of discovering how good you are. And Lord, for those of us who do know you, who do say that we follow you, Would you help us to follow Jesus' example and look to get involved and to serve as Jesus served? Amen.